Good afternoon. I'm Terry Kelly with the Henderson County Cooperative Extension, and glad you joined us this afternoon. A lot of people have an interest in gardening, and this afternoon we're going to talk about growing your own transplants at home. Now, there's certain crops that are better transplanted than they are direct seeded into the garden. Things like tomatoes, pepper, and then there's some that can be done either way, like broccoli or squash or cucumbers. So we're going to start today with some of the things that you'll need, and of course you'll need some seed. That's the first thing we start with. And so one of the things is, how do we get from here to here? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how we do that in just a minute. So first thing is, I like to use a seed starting mix, not just regular potting soil or even garden soil, but a seed starting mix, which is specifically made with the right texture for those seed to get a good start in. Now, there's several different things that you can use to grow these in. You can use a large tray like this, which I like to use. Now, this one's set up to use kind of like a mini greenhouse, where you seed the plants and then you put this on top. Now, one of the things that I would say is, don't do that, except maybe just during the germination process. Once they get up and going, you really don't need this part anymore. The other thing, if you notice, this tray doesn't have any holes in the bottom of it. I would prefer that you have some holes in the bottom of it. This one here, this part of the tray does have holes in the bottom of it. It really needs some kind of support. But you could, if you can only get one that doesn't have holes, I would suggest punching some holes in it. You can also start them in a little bit larger pots, particularly if you're growing tomatoes or pepper or something that's going to get a little bigger. What I generally do is start them in something like this, and then pick the best plants and transplant them into a pot like this. Or they also make these little small trays. And the thing about these is they're basically biodegradable. You can put them right in the ground when you're planting the plant, and you can grow them. Now, you can only grow a plant so big in a tray this size, or in a pot this size, and then you have to transplant it. One of the things that's very key is that once you start to transplant in the field, you need to tear this bottom off. You don't have to tear off the round part, but you can tear the bottom off so that the roots will penetrate the ground once you get them planted. Well, you can see that I've already filled up a couple of these here. What I've done is I've put this starter mix in there, and then I've wet them down so that we can put the seeds in. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with this tray, and just dump some soil out of the bag and onto the tray. Once you get a kind of a start, and then you start just moving it around until it fills up the holes. And I'll probably have to come back and put a little bit more in there to fill up the holes better. But just kind of keep it in the middle, and that way you don't have to worry about losing so much off the side. So we'll finish filling this tray up here. We do spill a little bit off the side, but that's all right. We can either gather that back up and use it in another tray, or we can just rake it off. So we've got this tray pretty well filled. We kind of rake off what we don't need right there. Okay, and now I'm going to set it down here on the ground for a minute. Got this tray filled up on the ground, and I'm just going to take my watering can and just water this, really good. Just let it settle that soil in. It gets the air pockets out of the soil and makes a good planting medium. One thing is, you always want to label what you plant, so of course you know what you're planting. So let's start out with a couple things that I find handy. A pencil actually comes in real handy, and what I do is just punch a hole in each one of those cells. You can do it just about as quickly as you can move through it. And then let's say we take some poblano pepper here. We've got some poblano pepper, okay? And this one in particular is called, we look at the front of the package, it just says poblano pepper. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to write here on my label, poblano, all right? And you'll notice sometimes these things don't open good. A knife comes in handy to make sure you get these open. And there's not a lot of seeds in these packs, you know, there's really just a few. So you can see there, you know, we've got that many seeds in the pack. So it's not going to seed too many things, but what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go through and drop one in each of these holes. And if you get two in there, don't worry about it, because I'm probably going to come back and put another one in if I have enough seed. So just in case that the one doesn't come up, I go ahead and I put a second one in the hole there. Okay, and so I've got about 3 seeds left over, but I'll throw them back in the pack here just to keep them for later. All right, and then I just come through with my finger, and that one didn't get in good, so I close up these holes with my finger so that the seed is covered up good. And then I'm going to take my poblano label and stick it in here where you can tell what you've planted in that cell right there. You know, what's neat about doing one like this is you can start a lot of plants, then you can pick out the best ones that you like and use them to transplant into your larger cells. But again, you know, you just go through, punch the holes pretty much just as fast as I can go through them. I've wet it down. I haven't you know, soaked it completely thoroughly, so you'll feel a little bit of give in that when you punch those holes, but it doesn't take long at all to go through and just punch a hole. Doesn't have to be right in the middle. It can be to the side or whatever, but that just gives you a place that you can drop that seed when you get done. So we've got our holes punched now. So we're gonna start out here with some Roma tomatoes. This is called Roma VF. Again, you're not gonna have many seed in there, probably. We'll see what we wind up with, but so we've got quite a few there. There's probably 50 or so seeds there. I'm not going to seed quite that many, but since I'm seeding these, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop 2 seeds in each of those holes. You know, sometimes they're a little bit hard to come apart, but you know, if you just kind of let them go between your fingers and fall out of your hand, you can, well, I got 3 in that one, that's okay. What we're going to do when these come up is we're going to thin them to the best looking plant. So it's okay if you get more than that to come up, because you're going to thin them later. And actually, if you've got one that you don't have one come up in and you pull one out of another one, as long as you don't break the plant, then you can actually move it to another cell that doesn't have a plant in it at that time. So you know, there's a lot we can do with these right now at that stage of growth. So we've planted our Roma tomatoes. So we take our label, we write Roma on that. I use a Sharpie pen because it's waterproof, and that way, now let's see, we got to remember to close up our holes. Okay, so we just go through and close up our holes. And like I said, I use a Sharpie pen because it's waterproof. Okay, now let's say I want to plant something else in there. Let's say, for instance, I want to plant some tomatillos. Okay, so I know I've planted those first 3 rows, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this pack of tomatillos, which is a purple tomatillo actually. Again, we don't get a lot of seed. Tomatillo seeds are very tiny compared to some of the seeds, some of the tomato seeds even. So we can, you know we've planted the first 3 rows, so we're going to drop a couple of seed in each of these. If they kind of land on top, don't worry, because when you punch them down, they'll go just a little bit deeper than that. Ooh, I think I got a bunch in that hole, but that's okay. You know, like I said, we'll thin them out when they start coming up. You want to thin them when they're still fairly young, because if you let them get too big, they'll start competing with each other. So I planted 3 rows of tomatillos there, put the rest of the seed back in, and again, I'll take my label and write tomatillo on that. And I know I started on the 4th row there, and so I put this one in there. Now you can go on and plant the rest of this tray. For instance, I've got some broccoli right here, and we'll do that one just because it's a different type seed. And you may think, well, it's a whole different type plant. It is, and they may get ready. In fact, you'll probably want to seed your broccoli plants a little sooner than you do your tomatoes and tomatillos because they're more cold hardy. But you can grow broccoli throughout the year. You see, wow, we just have just a few seed in that one, so we may not have much to plant, but we know we planted 3 rows of those, so we'll start right here and drop those broccoli seed. Most of the seed you'll see on the back of the package have a fairly high germination rate, so you know, if you plant 2 seed, chances are you're going to have 2 come up. But we do that just in case, because really the seed are not that terribly expensive compared to having to replant and having plants that are farther behind. So I'm going to drop those, and I only dropped a couple in each of those, so I'll throw another one there. We didn't close up these holes, so we'll make sure they get closed up. Don't want you to think I left those open for a purpose. I didn't. I just went ahead without those. Okay, so then we planted these next 3 with broccoli. We'll close those up good. And see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've planted all the way over to here right now. Okay, so now we just write broccoli on this one. Actually, I misspelled it, but that's okay. As long as we know what it is, we've planted 3 rows of broccoli. Now, we're not going to plant the rest of this because of our time limitations, but you could put another 3 rows or 1 row or whatever you want to in that and put those in. Now, as far as what I would do with these, you could put the top on them and let them germinate from there. Usually that you want to keep them warm for the first several days, and it's okay to actually just stack them on top of each other for the first 3 or 4 days because they're not going to come through the ground yet. But then as long as you keep them indoors until they get started, and then you can start setting them outside on nice days like this and letting them grow. And then when you get ready to start fertilizing, we didn't put any fertilizer in this to start with, but one of the things that I recommend is a fertilizer that's high in phosphorus. Now you'll see a couple of different things in the store, and if you look on the back of the package here, it'll tell you right here how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium there is in that. In this particular one, there's 15% nitrogen, 30% phosphorus, and 15% potassium. And phosphorus is really good for root growth. Now one like this that's 24% nitrogen, 9% potassium, and phosphorus, and 16% potassium is good once you get them set out. But once you get them up and growing, or once you're trying to grow the plants, while you're trying to grow the plants, I use something like this that's high in phosphorus. And it's simple. You take your watering can, you fill it up with a gallon of water, and then you take the big end. This comes in it. Take the big end of that, scoop up a pretty good helping of that, and then just dump it in the jug and mix it up good. And that's what I'll be watering these plants with as they need it. Don't keep them too wet, but don't let them get more than just dry on top. They'll start coming up, and you'll get them thinned out, and then they'll start to grow, and hopefully you'll end up with something like this really soon. Now these plants are what I would call a little too young to put out yet, and I'll just show you. We can lift this plant out of here, and you see the soil falls apart from it. It doesn't have a really good root system developed yet. So I'm going to stick it back in there because to me that plant's too young to plant. So once these get to a good size and they've pretty much formed where you can pull them out with the whole root ball coming out, you could transplant them into something like this or even something like this. So that's our lesson for today on growing transplants. You don't want to put the tender stuff out until the danger of frost is past, but good luck growing your transplants at home. It's a good way to start your garden a little bit early and get a head start on things. This is Terry Kelly with the Henderson County Cooperative Extension Service, and thank you for being with us today.